3rd, 2000. Sorry about that. And let's see here. So September 23rd, 2022, and 1 p.m. And we have, if we can go ahead and call the order.
Thank you, Chair Pryor. This meeting is being conducted as a virtual meeting, so I will do a roll call of the trustees to confirm attendance. I will first call on the trustees that sit on both boards. Ms. Ginsburg.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Mr. Kehoe. Mr. Santos.
I am present.
Thank you, Mr. Kehoe. Mr. Santos? Okay. And now I will call on the trustees that sit on the Board of Retirement. Mr. Moore?
I'm here.
Thank you. Mrs. Gray?
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Bernstein?
I'm here.
Okay. Mr. Robbins?
I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Harris? Okay. Ms. Zapanta? Okay. Mr. Sanchez?
Present.
Thank you. And Mr. Pryor?
I am here.
Thank you. And next I will call on the Board of Investment Trustees. Mr. Kelly?
Present.
Thank you. Mrs. Sanchez?
I'm here. Can you hear? I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Present.
Thank you. Mrs. Jones?
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Greenwood? Okay. And Mr. Green? Okay. Staff participating in the meeting include CIO Sanchez Cramen, DCO Louis Lugo, AEOs JJ Popovich and Laura Guglielmo, Chief Counsel Stephen Rice, CIO and John Grable. We have several division managers on this call, and fiduciary councils include Bob Klausner, Tracy Kennedy, and Samantha Grant. Sorry, one more thing. And now we may proceed with the agenda.
Santos is present.
Thank you, Mr. Santos.
So that brings us to approval of the minutes. We have to do that twice. This is for the July 6, 2022 meeting of the joint meeting. And I need a motion from the Board of Retirement for the minutes.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion by Kehoe, second by Robbins.
Okay. Mrs. Ginsburg,
Yes.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Bernstein.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Kehoe.
Aye.
Thank you. And Mr. Robbins.
Aye.
Thank you. I don't see Ms. Zapanta on the call yet. Okay, now we need a motion for the Board of Investments.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion by Mr. Kelly, second by, I didn't catch who it was.
Trustee
Miss-
Jones, either one. Check your pick.
Either Joneses.
Taylor, no,
We'll go with Mrs. Jones because her hair looks really pretty today.
Okay.
Okay, Mrs. Ginsburg.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Santos.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Kehoe.
Aye.
Thank you. I don't see Miss Greenwood. Mr. Jones.
Aye.
Mrs. Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
And Mrs. Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everybody, for going through that so quickly. And that brings us to, public comment. I received no request for public comment unless I missed something.
No, we don't have a request from the public to address the board.
Thank you. That brings us to reports. And this report item A is for discussion. There's a memo dated September 15th. And Mr. Kryman.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Lugo's going to take care of it.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you, Chair Pryor. Good afternoon, trustees. I'll share some brief comments to just level set the discussion item. Over the last 5 months or so, LACERA staff, along with board chairs and trustees, board chair and vice chairs, excuse me, have met to discuss the timeline and also readiness plan as it relates to welcoming trustees back to the boardroom for in-person meetings. Over the last 5 to 6 weeks, obviously COVID protocols have been scaled back by both the CDC and also municipal governments, the County of Los Angeles to highlight. Also, community transmission levels at the County of Los Angeles have been transitioned to low. And as the memo states, attachment A, the County of Los Angeles is looking to conduct and resume in-person meetings effective with next week, September 27th. LACERA staff is currently ready to accommodate whatever direction is provided by the board, whether it's to hold in-person meetings or to continue teleconference meetings through the board, through the Brown Act emergency provision. As you discuss this topic, we just, from a staff perspective, would like the board to consider the following. A uniformed outcome for both boards that'll provide some administrative ease for LACERA staff. Also look at, if you look at in-person meetings and agree upon in-person meetings, the earliest we would recommend the boards to start is November. This would allow staff to train trustees on new audio and visual equipment that's been installed into the boardroom. And lastly, just to provide clear direction to staff, a vote if possible. That concludes my comments, and we're certainly ready to stand for questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? Let me get back to the screen. I don't have any hands up. All right, so what I understand is Mr. Rice has a brief statement for us.
Well, in the absence of any action, the boards will hold their October meetings by teleconference, because at the September meetings, both boards voted that the board shall hold teleconference meetings for 30 days, and the October meetings are within 30 days of the September meetings. We would like to get direction on whether to include on the October agendas a teleconference item to renew that. Certainly any trustee can also request that up to 5 days before the meeting per the regulations of the boards. I'm happy to answer any other questions. The board has the discretion, because the state of emergency remains in effect and because it's still possible to make the findings required by the Brown Act, to continue to hold teleconference meetings, but it's not required to do so. At this point, it's a discretionary matter for the boards. LA County, as Mr. Lugo stated, is going back into their boardroom with certain conditions in terms of limited attendance and masking. And the city of Pasadena, however, voted in September to continue their use of teleconferencing yet again into October, at least through October 12th as of right now. If you look around agencies throughout the state of California, there are many that have gone back to their boardrooms. There are also many that are continuing to teleconference, and this just reinforces that it's a discretionary decision for the boards. And I'm happy to answer any questions. We did provide, it's not really relevant to this discussion as for October, November, December, but after discussing it among staff, we felt it was appropriate to give the boards an update on the AB 2449, which will go into effect on January 1st, 2023, and was signed by the governor, I guess about 10 days ago now. That's all I have, Chair Pryor, at this point.
Mr. Kelly, I believe you're first.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. We have my sewer pipe, the first time in 100 years, being replaced outside my house. I had raised this issue at the BOI for a couple of reasons. One is I was not comfortable relying solely on the fact that the state of emergency was still in effect, because the great majority, like 90% of the orders have been rescinded, and the few that remained were related to healthcare provisions in certain hospitals. As well, I was very uncomfortable that, in essence, in my mind, the board was establishing or sending a message that it was safe for staff to go back to the building, but the board felt it wasn't safe for itself. And that disconnect with the tone at the top was very uncomfortable for me. So for the last probably 6 meetings or so, I have voted no at the BOI on that provision. I would put forth a motion, because there's not one, I don't think. I would put forth a motion thanking staff for their work on the matter, and for the BOI at least, it go back to the boardroom effective November, absent any material changes between now and then. Material
This is
changes in the
Gina
COVID
Sanchez. I'll
status.
second that.
So we have a motion, Kelly, second Sanchez for the Board of Investments. I'll go ahead and make it for the Board of Retirement.
I'll second it, Bernstein.
Mr. Bernstein's the second. And let me go to Mr. Kehoe, who's been waiting patiently.
Thank you. So I don't know why we're doing a joint session to discuss this and why, I mean, each individual board should be handling their own individual situation and scenario if they want to go back or not. So I don't know why we're doing this in a joint session. That being said, I missed the board offsite because I had COVID and was ill with that. I missed a number of meetings because of that. I know that in some view, we're beyond the COVID scenario, but it's still out there that people are still getting sick from it. The Metro board, who I report directly to as part of my day job, is still remote with all of their meetings and all of their committee meetings. So I just want to be very careful about if we go back into the boardroom that if we go that route, I don't intend to vote yes on the motion, but if we go that route, there should be a hybrid option, especially for those of us who are ill or have other reasons that they would be unable to attend. And also that we be careful about getting everybody back in the boardroom and then having to cancel and go back to remote sessions again. So I know we're getting to the point where things are getting back to normal, but I just caution us because everything's not 100% back to where we were. So but once again, I don't intend to support the motion at this point, but if a motion does go through, we absolutely need a hybrid option. It worked for the board offsite and was successful for the board offsite. There's no reason why we wouldn't be able to do that for the boardroom itself.
May I be put in the queue for a comment? I can't see the queue, so I don't know of another way of doing it.
Yes, go ahead, Gina.
Yes, I'd like to make a comment that our policies actually effectively allow for the hybrid option because of a motion that I made that was seconded back in 2018, actually, that allows for teleconferencing. And so that option is certainly there for any of us who feel like they don't feel safe. And so I wanted to highlight that in voting to come back to the board, this is really about messaging and tone at the top, rather than sort of forcing you to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation.
Ms. Jones.
Thank you. I just want to, I do understand the need to come back. In fact, my city recently even voted to have meetings with no mask. And so I understand the need to be back in person, and I welcome that. However, I still also share the concerns of Trustee Kehoe in that there should be options of the hybrid, because there are times where it might be safer for people to not push themselves to come to the meeting. He is correct. COVID is still impacting. I know at our city, it is impacting the employees. And then we also then have to do contact tracing, who was around certain people for extended periods of time, et cetera. I haven't seen the boardroom yet. I hope to see it soon, but I do understand that it's, very close counters is what I was told. So, I am supportive of the transition as I've seen many councils and boards going back to in person, but I do understand the importance of offering the hybrid option. Some of us take care of elderly people and we want to be safe, and the hybrid option would allow for that. I don't know if there's support for the hybrid, if the motion has to change, but If the motion is as is with no hybrid, I would not support that.
Mr. Rice.
Thank you. I think Mr. Harris was in front of me, or Mr. Moore, actually. I guess it was Mr. Moore.
Mr. Moore.
Yeah, I want to maintain the hybrid option because I had COVID back in August when I was at the meeting, but I was in quarantine. And after I finished my 10 days and took all the medication, I got the rebound. So I had it for another week. And now I can't even get a booster for 3 months after I completed my last cycle. And I have other, mitigating conditions, including age. And I really don't want to come back into the office at this point. Maybe next year I'll be comfortable and feel healthy enough to be able to be around a lot of unknown people.
Copy that. And now Mr. Rice.
Thank you, Chair Pryor. Just to clarify from a legal perspective, the hybrid option. Right now, as Trustee Sanchez pointed out, the hybrid option is permitted by policy of each board under the conditions and criteria set forth in those two policies. However, it's important for the trustees to know that if that version of hybrid return is used, that is under the old traditional, what I've been calling the traditional teleconferencing rules under the Brown Act, which means that the location that the trustee is at who's teleconferencing must be public, must be open to the public. So if there is a desire to go hybrid without having to comply with those traditional rules, then the board would need to adopt the state of emergency again, teleconferencing findings again, with the understanding, though, that there are going to be a lot of trustees who are going to choose to be in the boardroom, and maybe even the boardroom would be open for staff and the public, but that we are having a hybrid meeting, which means that there will be trustees who will be participating by telephone via under the COVID Brown Act rules. And there are cities that are doing that. Pasadena, for example, is doing that, where they have quite a few of their city council members in their chambers, but also a number who are teleconferencing in. But I wanted to make it clear when we talk about going hybrid, what that means. Hope that's helpful.
Legally, what it means. Mr.
Sorry.
Let me put you
I'll wait in
behind
line.
I'll get you behind Mr. Bernstein. So Mr. Santos.
Thank you, Chair Pryor. I agree with Mr. Kehoe. On a personal basis, like Mr. Moore, I'm an old guy, and as a consequence, it had a risk for me. I have an eye condition that prevents me from wearing a mask. And I'm happy to produce medical documentation to that effect, because what happens is that when you wear a mask, I can tie it as much as I can. I even bought a strip behind my back, my head, but still the air, when I breathe, it goes into my eyes and it creates a serious problem. Also, there is, I read a couple of days ago, there's a new variant coming. So in many of us, and Ms. Jones has stated, are around older people and grandchildren. And right now, I don't know if you can hear it, but I feel like I'm under the weather. And it's problematic because, we love our loved ones and we have to be in contact with them. And the situation, I hate to say it, but a lot of our children and grandchildren get exposed in school and then they come in and infect us. So I am very concerned with coming back and getting exposed again I don't know if I'm right now positive or not, but definitely have the symptoms. That will be the second time. And then the other concern that I have is that is, many of you probably remember when I got COVID, that the side effects that affected me. If you remember, I even lost track of the agenda and I was running the meeting. So it was quite embarrassing. And I see that happen quite often, that, what they used to call a senior moment now is a COVID moment, that it lasts for months. So I would Mr. Key, who I intend to vote no. It's just way too risky right now. We have been operating fishing, and there's really no reason for us to change that. But if, as Mr. Key mentioned, if the majority decides to go back, if I'm going to have to wear a mask, I won't be able to do that. I won't be able to be in. Happy to do it remotely, but it is really concerning. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Mr. Bernstein, then Ms. Sanchez, then Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Chair Pryor. To speak to Mr. Rice's comments as a seconder of the Board of Retirement motion, I had assumed that we would continue monthly permission for people to teleconference in without going through the onerous notification requirements that we had under the proposal that Mrs. Sanchez did put forward a couple of years ago. We could do that month to month. I support the motion wholeheartedly. I think the optics of us treating ourselves as more worthy of a level of protection than our staff are terrible. And I monitor our travel and education reports. And at this point, most of us are traveling for LACERA. I don't know what else we're doing in our own business. And I reject the idea that there is something inherently and specifically dangerous about the LACERA boardroom compared to our other conduct. That all being said, I am fully supportive of continuing to give people permission at their election to teleconference in, and at least in the initial months of doing it in a way that there's no particular notification involved. I thought that was implied that we could continue to do that in the motion, so I didn't think there was a defect in the motion, but I certainly wanted to express my willingness in the first few months to give people that option.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. Mr. Jones.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. The question I have, again, as a newbie, I've never been into the boardroom, so I don't have the tradition or know what the experience is like or what have you. So my question, in part to Mr. Rice, as well as to the staff here, is, rather than kind of a return to normal, which I think is 2 years into this, I think there's been enough predicate to kind of establish that there's a new normal. And so the question really is well, what is the new normal? And does the new normal provide, I don't know, better public access, right? So people who do public comments can comment in a way without having to potentially, come into the room. So there's all these other benefits that may exist there. And then I just want to be understand also, Mr. Rice, that when you use the word teleconference, it's more than kind of like the old school, you're just at a phone somewhere. It does include the Zoom kind of technology and the fact that you can be somewhere and things that nature. I just want to make sure I'm understanding the preciseness of teleconference, meaning more than just I'm on a phone logging in versus Zoom logging in from that perspective. But that would just be my addition to the conversation, is that while everybody else, where the larger culture is transitioning to whatever the new normal is, and I'm sure there's been some evaluation that I know Santos, Kryman, and Luis and Laura has done as well. I think it's one thing to be a staff person that has team requirements and things going on, and there being one certain kind of standard. But for us, we're really, we're laymen that are being asked to contribute. So I don't know that I'd necessarily see the distinction between, like, we're privileging ourselves in some way that people who are kind of earning their living and their expertise and everything are doing it a different way. So just kind of a data point through there, just to contribute to the conversation. But my preference would be to maintain the status quos we have it now, but I'm not sure exactly what other rules may or may not allow us to do that, and whether there's a new policy subsequent to 2018 that would allow us on a board policy perspective to do it just by voting in our respective boards, as Trustee Keough had suggested earlier.
Mr. Robbins. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
I think I was after.
Sorry, Gina. I forgot. I'm not looking down there. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I'm sorry. I would actually like to hear from Mr. Rice, because both the last two comments seem to have questions Mr. Rice could clarify before I make my comment. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Chair Pryor, may I go ahead?
Please, yes.
So in answer to the second question that Trustee Jones asked about the meaning of teleconference is defined under the Brown Act to include video as well. So the Zoom meetings whenever we say teleconference, it's shorthand for all those methods by video or audio by which a member can participate remotely. As to the first question about the procedures for in the boardroom and for public access, I know that the executive office has spent a lot of time working on that, so probably should Chair Pryor ask Mr. Lugo or Ms. Guglielmo to answer that aspect of his question.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and hear Mr. Robbins, and then I will turn it over to Mr. Lugo to talk about the
Miss Sanchez. You mean Miss Sanchez? I was still next.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yes. So I guess I think that the points that Mr. Bernstein are raising are extremely important, which were effectively the point that Mr. Kelly was raising at the beginning, which is that if we feel so strongly that we're putting ourselves in danger, then how can we possibly ask our employees to do the same? And however, I also recognize that there are going to be individual circumstances, as there are, by the way, with our employees, and that LACERA is operating on a case-by-case basis, and that we could also operate on a case-by-case basis in order to allow for that. I think the larger question that is up for grabs here, and again, I do think it's important for us to eat what we cook in terms of policy, and if our policy is to bring employees back, we have to consider doing that. And there are always the opportunities for making, you can always teleconference in. Now, Mr. Rice raises a good point, which is that if we go to that, if that becomes our policy for hybrid, it does mean that you are disclosing your location and in theory making it open to the public by disclosing it publicly. And that may or may not be something that someone is comfortable with. I've always done it from my office, and so that's always why it's been easy enough for me when I have had to telecommute before the pandemic. There are other questions about what that means for the public comment. Would public comments come in via Zoom, or would that now have to be in person in Pasadena if we go back to the office with a teleconferencing policy? But I still come back to the basic messaging that if we feel that strongly about the danger, then you have to question a lot of other things that quite frankly are impacting our productivity at LACERA. And so I think we have to really put our beneficiaries well before our needs in that regard, and handle these on a case-by-case basis. I'm not meaning to be insensitive to the fact that we all have special concerns that we may or may not need, and I want to be sensitive to those. But I do think that our beneficiaries deserve a productive and present staff. And that we as a board need to be productive and present as well. And I think there are aspects of that productivity, of the conversations, of the sidebar conversations that we can possibly have in a boardroom situation that we just can't have in Zoom, without without constant text going back and forth. So, I think that for those who have not been to the boardroom, you may not know what you're missing, but for those of us who have been to the boardroom, I think you understand that there is something to coffee before the meeting and having a conversation, or even having lunch after the meeting, that does create a collaborative environment when we might otherwise have differences of opinion. And I think that collegiality and collaboration is sorely needed always. And I don't think there's ever an opportunity that we should put that on the back burner. And again, I want to get back to the notion that the needs of our beneficiaries are first and foremost. That is our fiduciary obligation. And we don't want to and will not put anybody in danger in order to do that. But by the same token, I think we're going to want to make the best decision that we can with our beneficiaries in mind. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. We'll have Mr. Robbins, then Ms. Gray, and then Ms. Jones, and then we'll go to you, Mr. Lugo. Mr. Robbins.
I do think that we should get back to in-person meetings, but I will support Mr. Kehoe's version of the motion, which gives those people who are uncomfortable coming back for whatever reason, the option to Zoom in, just like we're doing right now. So that's the motion that I would support. Also, just for those of you on the board who don't know, everybody is not back in the office at LACERA working 5 days a week. So I just want all of you to know that that is currently not the case. Thank you.
Ms. Gray. Oh, Ms. Gray.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right.
Good to go.
First of all the points that I would have made have been made in opposition to the motion. I agree with Mr. Kehoe tremendously that we need to consider ourselves. We don't know who is coming in, going out. And as Mr. Santos has said, and I even saw that article myself, that there is a new variant coming. It is cold, or will be cold soon. It is flu season. For myself, I'm immunocompromised, and I'm also old. And I am hesitant to put myself in a position. I mean, I have seen so many friends that are my age that have passed away for the very reason that they were not careful in what they were doing and how they did it. I would rather be safe than sorry. So I'm very much in support of the motion that Mr. Kehoe made with respect to, was that a hybrid, Mr. Kehoe?
So where's our reach?
What?
I didn't make a motion, but
No,
what I did.
the current motion was made by Mr. Bernstein. Somebody needs to mute.
5:45.
Somebody needs to mute. There we go.
I made the motion for the BOI.
And Mr. Kelly by BOI, and I seconded for BOR. I'm not sure who on BOI seconded. And that did not include, I think it's important to put out, that did not include a hybrid scenario. If we're going to do that, I believe that that needs to be a different motion that includes a hybrid scenario. So before we go making a motion, let's deal with the current motion as it's on the table, which
Chair
is.
Pryor, I understand the motion differently. Can we have Mr. Rice clarify? My understanding is that the motion would inherently include the old language about teleconferencing permitted, and that the only way that we can continue the emergency protocols is not to include it in this motion, but to just agendize it each month and approve it. So I've heard both Mr. Kehoe and Mr. Robbins' concerns, and as the motion seconder, I think they're actually addressed in the motion. I'm happy to amend the motion if it does. Maybe Mr. Rice could speak to that.
The motion is silent on the issue of the teleconference option or hybrid. It just talks about going back to the boardroom in November. However, what that means is that would be subject to all existing policies, and all existing policies include the teleconference policy. But as I stated, that is the traditional Brown Act rules. If we want to continue to have hybrid using the COVID option of not identifying location and opening locations up to the public where trustees are sitting, then we would continue to present the COVID consent item on a monthly basis. That doesn't need to be addressed in the motion. Staff can just do it, or trustees can request it under the regulations in advance of the 5 days in advance of the meeting, and we would include it. So it would be helpful to have clarification on the issue, but it's not essential because there are options to make either happen.
Okay, let me get back to trustee questions and trustee statements. Ms. Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted clarification as Mr. Rice just provided us, because I did want to have understanding of the motion and what it entailed, and whether we would still be able to continue to issue the notification of having the hybrid meetings. The other thing I just wanted to address from a perspective of bringing staff back into the office, as most agencies have done, it's been on a hybrid basis. So I did want to reiterate that another trustee also mentioned that it is a hybrid basis, as well as we went through great lengths that we made sure staff, when they came back to the office, there was sufficient distance between staff, so that, you know, if they spent all day sitting one cubicle next to the other, there was some form of a barrier. There were things that were put in place to bring people back into the office. As I indicated, I don't know the situation of the boardroom, but if it is possible that one person there is positive for COVID and we're sharing a small encounter and everyone is there, is there a high probability that a number of board members or trustees would test positive for COVID because of that? So, you know, there is a question as far as the layout of the room, and are there anything that would be put in place that would allow for distancing, et cetera. And I personally will, if I attend the meeting, would be wearing a mask because that would be my choice. But you know, that was just an additional question that I have as far as the actual boardroom. Thank you.
So let me do Mr. Moore, Mr. Lugo, then Mr. Kelly, and Mr. Kehoe. So Mr. Moore first, please.
Okay, so I understand that the motion is to return to in-person board meetings, and that there's always the option of telecommuting or teleconferencing, as long as you comply with the but the existing, I guess, Brown regulations requiring you to identify your location and make it accessible. But if we adopted the hybrid meeting rules under the COVID protocol, we could continue with the meetings that we're having right now and not be required to disclose location and make it public. So I would support the motion if it included an instruction to staff to make the report that we're required to read and approve to have the hybrid available in the subsequent meeting on every agenda, and not have to be required to request it every month.
Thank you. Mr. Lugo.
Thank you, Chair Pryor. Just a couple of items to answer Trustee Jones's question, and also in terms of our LACERA staff hybrid model. So LACERA staff is currently working in a hybrid model. We instituted that back in May when we got out of our emergent protocol. Each division handles their hybrid model a little bit differently. So there's staff that's in the office, you know, a few days a week, every other week. So we're still following kind of this hybrid model. Also, in terms of our protocols, our COVID protocols, we're aligning with the Public Health County of Los Angeles's public health community transmission alerts. So as of now, the protocols within the building is recommended as opposed to mandated. So social distancing as well as masking are recommended to staff, not required based on the community transmission levels. As it relates to the boardroom, we did work on some capacity. So we did lower the capacity. The boardroom currently allows for a capacity of over 70. At the current layout that we have proposed that we're working on, it's about 43. We also have an overflow room on the first floor to ensure that we have ample space in the event that we have additional visitors to the boardroom for the public, as well as the dais. I know it is pretty close quarters to both anyone that hasn't been in the boardroom, but we are looking at ways where we can maybe have some staff sitting and outside the dais to provide a little bit more elbow room for trustees, and we'll be sharing those as part of our just readiness plan. We did do a dry run in July just to go through the audio-visual aspects, as well as there was a mention of public comment. The public would be able to have public comment both in the boardroom, we'll allow for that, as well as Zoom meetings. So we'll certainly allow for that as well.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. Mr. Rice, just so I'm clear, if staff continued to place an agenda item on the agenda regarding the finding, that is not mutually exclusive to some or all of the board returning to the boardroom if they wish?
That is correct.
Okay, and I'm sensitive to the concerns about not returning to the boardroom for some, very sensitive. And I, like Ms. Jones, when I do return, and I intend to return as soon as possible, will wear my mask. So I will revise my motion to instruct staff to continue to place the finding item on the agenda each month. Now, at some point, Mr. Rice, just as an aside, your memo regarding legislation suggests that will not be necessary at some point in the future, because state law will change that will allow a certain number of trustees to teleconference without having their home ADA accessible and open to the public and address disclosed. Is that correct?
Chair Pryor.
To me?
Can I go
Mr.
ahead?
Rice.
Yes, may I answer Mr. Kelly's question?
Yeah, please.
Very respectful of the protocols. So Chair Kelly, the new legislation, which goes into effect on January 1st, does not allow all trustees to teleconference if they wish. In fact, it only allows a limited number.
Right.
A quorum must be in the boardroom, and it also doesn't allow trustees to teleconference at their choice. It requires them to either establish just cause or present emergency justification the board would be required to vote on.
Got it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't that have to also be activated at the Board of Retirement? I know the Board of Investments had some kind of vote on it, on teleconferencing, but doesn't that have to be also activated at the Board of Retirement to be policy?
No, we would, the statute is effective on January 1st, regardless. We would bring to the Board of Retirement policies and procedures for that board, and policies, and then board policies and procedures to the Board of Investments for its meetings with respect to how that's going to be used, because there may be questions about allocation, prioritization, and so forth. So we would be bringing a policy at some point, probably before the end of the year, to the boards to try to address, kind of preempt those issues and have a smooth system moving forward. But the best option to achieve, and it's up to the boards, of course, but the best option to achieve the goal of allowing trustees, if they are not comfortable to attend in person, to attend remotely, would be to continue, so long as it's legally available, the COVID option.
Okay, so I would amend my motion to instruct staff to continue to place on the Board of Investment agenda, the COVID finding, the COVID exception, and also instruct staff to prepare the boardroom for a November return by the Board of Investments to the boardroom for those who wish to return to the boardroom.
I'm the seconder, and I would second that amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez.
I was motioned to the Board of Retirement motion, and I'll do the same thing. I'll make the same amendment.
And Chair Pryor, I was seconder and I will accept the amendment as well.
Only one problem I can see in all this is most everybody is being, I don't want to say cooperative, but most everybody's trying to accommodate everybody else. And we're all, either going to be in attendance or teleconferencing at the November, December meetings. Well, who's actually going to go to the meeting? If it's just me sitting in the boardroom in Pasadena by myself, then that's a little uncomfortable and kind of weird. If there's two, maybe three of us, even that still might be a little bit awkward, when maybe the better solution would have been for everybody to attend the meeting online. So I'm really not sure, and I am asking for some suggestions about how we address that. For example, almost everybody here has said it's fine that we attend the meeting in person, but me, I'm going to attend online. And I need the exception to be able to attend online, which I have no problem with. But at the same time, I don't want there to be the scenario where there's only one or two people in the boardroom and everybody else is attending the meeting online. With that, Mr. Kehoe.
I was going to ask for the amendments that were made, so I'm in support of the amendments. I hear your concerns, Mr. Pryor, but to me, there's only two options. It would be either entirely hybrid or an entirely online, or a hybrid option, because we're not going to force a number of the trustees into the rooms based on a variety of our concerns.
Are you saying entirely online or entirely in person, or
No,
you're supportive of in person with hybrid?
Yeah, what I'm saying is there's only two options. The option would be either doing it entirely online as we're doing right now, or to do a hybrid option.
Okay.
But to do forcing everybody in, I don't think that would be acceptable. I don't think that there'd be votes there for that anyways. But so I'm in support of this because it meets everybody's demands. And I'll just leave it at that.
I have a quick question for Mr. Rice. As chair, do I have the authority to make, say for example, there's only one person or two people attending the meeting in person in November. Do I have the option to make the meeting entirely online?
The motion includes the flexibility for people to choose to be online. So it may be as long as the findings are being made, there'll always be a teleconference meeting, and the effect of the motion is that all or none or any number in between of the trustees can be remote or in person. So it's just all options are possible.
Can the chair ask that the meeting be held online?
No, the chair doesn't have that ability. Under the charter, the chair of the boards consult with the boards and the CEO or the CIO about the location and conduct of the meetings. The chair doesn't. The charters don't give the chair the unilateral power to dictate the method of the meeting.
Well, I'm still in favor of my own motion. Good thing. And I just want to specify why. I just feel like there needs to be an end date to what we're doing here, and applying that November 1st or December end date does start to make in-person attendance a reality and not just something we talk about every once in a while. So I'm going to sustain my motion, and I appreciate everybody's input. I see Mr. Kelly is in the queue, and then maybe we can start thinking about making a vote out of this thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Pryor, I did just want to confirm, because you haven't heard it from a trustee, that I do intend to attend the meetings in person.
Okay. And I think Mr. Bernstein was also. No, I think.
And Ms. Sanchez.
And Ms. Sanchez. I think there's some that'll actually go, but it'll be a little awkward if there's only one or two of us in the in-person meeting and everybody else is attending online. That's all I guess I'm saying. I don't think the governance will change. I think the work will get done. I think that we've done an excellent, really good job of getting our business done online and through these kind of meetings. And I don't think that'll change at all if we do go to the hybrid meetings. I don't have a problem with that. The only thing I want to do is try and get an end mark to the administration, to staff about when and how, and let's start to prepare for returning back to meetings. When individuals have a comfort level of them returning back to the boardroom. I mean, my comfort level is, 100% right now. I'm around people and sick people and, people breathing on me all day with a mask, and it's just, I just catch COVID every once in a while. But there's going to be different levels of that all across the spectrum. And I want to be able to accommodate as much of them as I can, with the understanding that I'm very comfortable with the governance either being online or in a meeting. So either way we go, I think the motion conveys not only the sentiment of the board, but I think my own ease with being able to hold meetings. So I hope I do get to see all of you in person. That would be great before I leave. So I got one more hand up, Mr. Sanchez.
I'll just briefly state that I'm looking forward to meeting everybody in person, however comfortable we are. I'm one of those that has done this virtually for my whole service here at LACERA, but also absolutely open to letting the trustees make those decisions for themselves and having that option. I would plan on attending in person. That would be my plan for myself. But I want to be supportive of giving everyone those options. I also have two little girls in public school, so we're out there, and I have noticed that my daughters have fewer runny noses and aren't as sick, and they're wearing their masks at school. So just want to share that.
Thank you for sharing that. And I just wanted to point out too that we will get a free lunch out of it. The Board of Investments gets theirs in a chafing dish. We get ours in a bag, but that's okay.
No hate.
Remember that? Okay.
I want to take dish.
There you go.
Can we put in cookie requests now as well with the motion?
Absolutely. I'll bake them.
Oatmeal raisin.
Actually, you got to be careful with cookie requests these days. That can go wrong real quick, especially with you guys. All right. So that looks like all the speakers I have. If this is still semi-informal, so if Mr. Lugo, Mr. Rice, if you have anything you want to close with through the chair, I'm more than happy to hear it.
No additional comments, Chair. I appreciate the conversation and the candor among the trustees. Certainly helps staff.
Yes, very much so. Thank you. And I also want to extend the same appreciation. Mr. Rice?
Nothing from you, Chair Pryor.
All right, that appears to be it. That'll bring us for a motion. Oh, we do have another closed session item coming.
So we have to do roll call. We have to vote on the items.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I forgot we need to vote. So I'll make the first motion is from the Board of Retirement, and Mr. Lugo, Mr. Rice, do we understand the motion as it's been made?
Yes, I'll leave it to Mr. Rice to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's been made quite clear at this point.
Steve, Ms. Greenwood would like for you to restate the motion one more time.
The motion is to return to the boardroom in November, but continue to agendize the COVID finding every month, and also to direct staff to prepare the boardroom properly for the return for the benefit of those that will be in the boardroom, including trustees and the public.
For the November meeting.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry, it was just the conversation went so many directions. I wasn't quite sure where we landed.
That's board chair work right there. Got out of control on me. All right, so we have the motion for Board of Retirement.
Ms. Ginsburg,
Yes.
Mr. Sanchez,
Yes.
Mr. Santos,
No.
okay, Mrs. Gray,
No.
Mr. Bernstein,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe,
Aye.
Mr. Robbins.
I'm an aye.
Okay, the motion passes with 2 noes.
Thank you. That means it's time for the Board of Investments to vote. And just to clarify, the chair was Mr. Kelly. I'm sorry, the motion was Mr. Kelly.
Yes,
Yeah.
seconded by Ms. Sanchez.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Ginsburg,
Yes.
Mr. Santos,
No.
Mr. Kehoe,
Aye.
Ms. Greenwood,
Yes, but reluctantly.
Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Mrs. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Sanchez.
Yes.
Okay, the motion
Yes.
passes with 1 no.
Thank you. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we're in open session right now, but we need to go to closed session for a legal issue?
Yeah, so we do have good of the order still.
Oh, we do. Okay, great.
Um,
Good of the order. If you would like to speak during good of the order, go ahead and put your little hand thingy up. Or turn your camera on and raise your hand. I can do either one. Seeing nobody on good of the order for either board?
And
What?
also, we don't have any items for staff review or any items for future agendas.
Thank you, Linda. So am I right? Do we have to go to closed session?
Yes, but Steve has to make a statement before we can go into closed session.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. I just want to confirm for the record that the closed session relates to the employment claim of James Breck. Thank you.
And that brings us to, that does not adjourn the meeting. I'm sorry, we get a second.
We're just going to clear out the room real quickly.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and give it 5 minutes and clear out the room. Everybody can get a break in. 5 minutes.